Hi, this is William Saunders from Saunders Street Records and Tiny Messenger Media. And today I want to talk to you about habits and traits. Now, if you've seen my overview of strategic planning, you know that I list this as the secret weapon for you to include in your arsenal for making your next 365 days your best yet. So, before we dive into it, I want to give you just a little bit of background on this. Now, I have been involved in strategic planning for a very long time. I don't even want to say how long because it'll give away how old I am. But anyway, back in 2008 ish, I saw the writing on the wall that I knew that the job I had, which was a really high paying job in high end IT consulting inside of an organization, I knew that was probably going to see its end. And so I started planning what's next. And I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I started studying and researching artists and trying to deduce by reading biography after biography and story after story and Rolling Stone and Newsweek and everywhere I could find information about an artist specifically. I was wanting to know about their habits and traits. And over time, by the time I started Saunders Street Records in 2009, I had a vague idea of what I believed to be the key traits and habits that musical artists want to have to be successful. And then as I grew into the label, I did more and more research and I kind of figured out a way to make it formulaic. And so I've used that in the years to try to figure out who's going to be more apt to be successful as I'm engaging young artists. So with that said, let's take a look at this. I consider habits and traits to be two of the four pillars of success. And I'll have a whole different video on these four just in general terms, but let's dive into this though. So they are talent, habits, traits, and strategy. But today, of course, we're only going to focus on these two, habits and traits. Before we get too far into this, I want to make sure we're thinking about these in the same way. So a trait is a noun, and it's a distinguishing quality or characteristic, especially belonging to a person. A habit is a noun, and it's really defined as a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that's hard to give up. So let's take a look at the traits that are commonly associated with successful musical artists. Self-motivation, work ethic, and conscientiousness. Discipline, consistency, and reliability. These help artists stick to their craft, manage practice schedules, and treat the creative side like a job. And that's exactly what you should do, is you should be the CEO of your own organization where you are the boss and you are over you as an employee and you have the discipline to make sure that things are getting done. Perseverance, grit, and resilience. The capacity to persist over many years despite setbacks, rejection, and slow progress. Emotional sensitivity and expressiveness. High emotional awareness, empathy, and the ability to channel feeling into a performance or songwriting. This underlies interpretation, creativity, and connection with audiences. Openness to experience, creativity, and originality. You need to have a willingness to experiment, explore different genres and styles, and try novel combinations. This often distinguishes artists who innovate rather than replicate. Patience and having a long-term perspective. Understanding that success in music rarely comes overnight, and you're okay with being comfortable with gradual progress. That's the path most people take. Professionalism and social skills. It's important to have punctuality, respect, and reliability, and the ability to collaborate, network, and handle business aspects. All are useful in navigating the music industry. Healthy perfectionism and high standards. Many successful musicians aim high, refine until they're satisfied, and use perfectionism when balanced to push achievement. Now, of course, there is an unhealthy level of perfectionism, but that's a topic for another day. Resilience under pressure and performance toughness. This boils down to handling performance anxiety, criticism, uncertain outcomes, and continuing despite emotional difficulty. Again, I consider this to be the number one secret weapon in underwriting your success, your habits. Really, these first set of bullets are aimed for someone at the outset of their music career who was just starting to get a hold. I will cover some more advanced topics for those who have been doing this for a while and or have plateaued or really just need to find a new paradigm of success. One of these is having consistent structured practice, not just when you feel like it. Every day or regular practice sessions, even small, treating practice as non-negotiable rather than occasional burst. Again, you need to be the tortoise in this and just have steady, consistent activity. Focusing on fundamentals and techniques early on. Rather than skipping basics, many succeed by paying attention to posture, hand position, breathing for singers, rhythmic accuracy, building a strong technical foundation before chasing flashy skills. Setting clear goals, short and long term. Having direction keeps progress measurable and helps maintain motivation, whether goals are learning a piece, improving a technique, releasing songs, or landing gigs. Now, I can tell you that this is part of strategic planning. If you're not familiar with it, please check out my overview of strategic planning in the comments down below. Active listening, studying other musicians, and learning broadly. You know what? It's okay to observe your peers, study recordings, absorbing different styles. This widens your creative vocabulary. It really is a language, and it helps in developing your own original style. Adaptability. It really helps if you can evolve, experiment, and stay open to change. Musical landscapes shift. Successful artists often adapt styles, approaches, and take advantage of new technologies. Having a professional mindset. Treat music as both art and business. Be punctual, honor your commitments, network when you can, maintain good relationships, and manage your finances. Good social skills and respect for collaborators goes a long way. This is really important because there's a philosophy I have, which is the concept of you incorporated, where you are the CEO of you incorporated. And it's imperative that you have at least a grasp of how to manage your finances, how to have some level of business savvy. But we'll go into more of that in it, not only in this presentation, but also I've got other ones that I've got earmarked for helping people with that specific task. Emotional self-awareness and self-care. And this is really managing pressure and anxiety because many musicians face setbacks, rejection, and performance anxiety. Resilience and strategies to deal with stress are really key. As you become more serious about music as a career and you've had enough experience in polished product, you may want to adopt these habits and practices. And these are ones that I coach people to do. You should tackle something you dislike doing, but needs to be done. I learned this trick a long time ago. It is so much easier to, instead of procrastinating the things you don't like to do, get them out of the way. Get them out of the way as soon as you possibly can. That way, it leaves more time for you to do the things that you enjoy doing. The second thing is create a reward system for managing distracting and competing habits. This is another thing I try to coach on, which is if you can gamify your habits, it does go a long way. And what I mean by that is you create a reward system. I'm going to spend 3 hours researching AI so I can figure out, is there any way I can use these tools to help move my marketing efforts up 3 notches and be able to reap 10 grand in sales. It's a very specific task I'm trying to accomplish here. And I don't really want to do this task, but I'd rather work on a new song. However, I'm going to give myself a reward basis. I'm going to spend 3 hours doing this. And in return, I'm going to give myself 2 hours of songwriting time when I get done. But I'm going to force myself to tackle this task. And then I mentioned this before, but learn to think like a CEO. Again, you are the CEO of You Incorporated, And if you think about how a CEO thinks, what do they want most of? Results. And it is your job to ensure that you are getting the results that you want. And lastly, become just enough business savvy. And what I mean by that is you don't have to be an accountant. You don't have to be a sales professional, but you do need to know enough so that one, you can speak the language. Two, nobody's going to pull the wool over your eyes. They're not going to take you for a ride because you know what something's worth, what the outcome should be. A lot of people get taken advantage of, especially young artists that are trying to make their way. They get a lot of promises for this and that, and sometimes it doesn't work out, especially when you talk about contracts and something that you sign and make a commitment to. You need to have enough business savvy to know how to navigate that, or you need to have somebody in your camp that can on your behalf. How well do you know your habits? To fully understand our habits, all you have to do is understand where you're spending your time. Habits, those actions and practices that you repeat often and have a duration of 30 minutes or more, should be tracked for a month or two. Keeping a journal of your time can help you evaluate their impact. Here's the truth about your habits. Every habit you have will have either a positive or negative contribution to achieving your goals. Thus, they become strengths and weaknesses. I don't really like stating them as that because the reality is there is nothing wrong with, let's say, playing video games. It only becomes a problem if it's detracting from you achieving your goals. So the old saying about everything in moderation, this is why a reward system is really, really valuable. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do those things. It just means that you should understand and make good decisions around why you're going to choose to do this as opposed to doing something that helps you. This is the other hard truth about your habits. If your habits and practice stay exactly the same, you should expect to see the exact same progress towards your goals a year from now. Quite literally, if you want different results, you have to do something different. Try adopting and maintaining success-oriented habits and practices is your secret weapon. Great. Now let's look at 10 musician case studies and their traits and habits behind their success. These are all artists that I've either researched in the past or researched here recently to try to deduce their traits and habits and why it should matter to you. Johnny Cash has, is the epitome of grit, reinvention, and emotional honesty. His traits are perseverance, authenticity, and emotional depth. His habits, constantly writing, touring even during career slumps, and pushing into new styles. Why it matters. He survived career collapses, addiction, and changing trends by reinventing himself musically and aesthetically. His emotional vulnerability became a competitive advantage. Beyonce, discipline, work ethic, perfectionism, healthy and productive perfectionism, by the way. Her traits, conscientiousness, high standards, and intense focus. Her habits, structured rehearsals, meticulous vocal practice, constant creative experimentation. Why does it matter? Because she treats music like an elite sport. Her habits, not natural skill alone, drove her from talented child to industry icon. Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails. Obsession, independence, technical mastery. The traits, high openness, introversion, deep emotional expression. His habits are learning multiple instruments, mastering recording technologies, doing early production entirely alone. Why it matters. Reznor's self-sufficient approach and obsession with sound design shaped a unique sonic identity. Taylor Swift, narrative-driven, adaptability, and relationship building. Her traits, storytelling instinct. She's one of the best storytellers there are out there. Emotional intelligence and social strategy. Before I move on, I want to talk about EQ, emotional quotient. You know, It's very important. And the higher emotional quotient you have as an artist, I think you'll go a little further. Her habits, daily writing, cataloging lyric ideas, evolving genre identities, why it matters. Her ability to pivot, seriously, country to pop to indie folk to, I'm not sure what it is now, pop, while maintaining authenticity is a textbook case of adaptability. David Bowie, reinvention, creative risk taking, and curiosity. His traits: openness to experience, flexibility, and an experimental mindset. His habits: immersing himself in art, theater, fashion, and film, willingly abandoning successful personas. Why it matters? Because his willingness to change before he had to kept his work fresh for decades. The one and only Prince: work ethic, first and foremost, multi instrument mastery, and perfectionism. His traits: intensity, confidence, and creative independence. His habits: he had marathon studio sessions, playing nearly every instrument on his early recordings and writing daily. Why it matters: his discipline allowed him to produce an enormous catalog of work and control his artistic vision end to end. Billie Eilish and Phineas: low ego, collaboration, experimentation, and a do it yourself attitude. Traits: creativity, emotional sensitivity, confidence without arrogance. Habits: home recording, constant experimentation, using limitations as advantages. This is why it matters, because they show modern artists how to succeed through authenticity and smart do it yourself production. Johnny Greenwood of Radiohead: intellectual curiosity and fearless learning. Traits: highly openness, analytical creativity. Habits: studying classical music and composition, mastering electronic gear, and incorporating non-rock techniques into his songs. Why does it matter? Greenwood's curiosity drove Radiohead into groundbreaking territory. Dolly Parton: perseverance, optimism, and branding savvy. Her traits: grit, humor, emotional intelligence, and generosity. Her habits: writing constantly, protecting her publishing rights, and building a positive personal brand. Why does it matter? Because Dolly has combined artistic discipline and entrepreneurial vision long before it was commonplace. And lastly, Kendrick Lamar: reflectiveness, storytelling, social awareness. His traits: introspection, cultural insight, and authenticity. His habits: meticulous writing, self editing, studying other artists, revising lyrics obsessively. Why does it matter? Because his commitment to depth and narrative complexity defines his artistry. As I did this, it became obvious that there are some patterns across these 10 artists. Across wildly different genres, careers, and backgrounds, several consistent traits and habits emerge. Here are their shared traits: perseverance through long periods of uncertainty, openness to new styles, influences, and collaborators, emotional sensitivity, strong storytelling or expressive depth, self discipline, and internal motivation, the ability to withstand or transform criticism, comfort with risk and change. Now, these are their shared habits: daily or near daily writing, practicing, and experimenting, constant learning, instruments, production, technology, and genres, reinvention, adapting to new context, treating music both as art and a profession, protecting their creative autonomy, building strong networks and relationships. For the longest time, I heard all you need is a lot of hard work and talent. Well, the answer is a little bit more complex than that, and it's certainly more nuanced than that. One of the things I can say is artistic success isn't just hard work plus talent. It's often hard work plus certain personality traits, resilience, openness, and emotional sensitivity, plus strategic habits, plus environment, support, networks, and exposure. There's a balancing act between technique and emotion, discipline and creativity, consistency and spontaneity. Success often demands professionalism, social skills, business savvy, and adaptability, not just musicality. Sometimes negative traits such as a measure of perfectionism or performance anxiety coexist with success when managed well. They can fuel higher standards and growth. So I know what you're thinking. Wow, that's great information, but how do I actually put this to practical use? Well, it starts with inventory your habits. And the ones you want to look at are the things you do on a consistent basis or regularly that take up more than 30 minutes at a time. And you're going to segment these into contributors and detractors in relationship to achieving your goals. And before we get crazy with this, I want you to understand it doesn't mean necessarily that you stop doing things that are a detractor. It just means there's just not a positive contribution to you meeting your goals. And that's okay. Some of these are just going to be that way, but you have to understand how much time you're spending at that activity. So contributors are strengths and detractors are weaknesses. And you also will inventory your traits. You want to identify the traits that contribute to achieving your goals and identify traits synonymous with success. Identify how you can build those traits. Work all that outcome into your roadmap for the next 365 days as part of your strategic plan. So the question is, how many of the traits and habits that you saw associated with these artists do you possess yourself? If you don't have those traits, is there somebody around you that does have that you can put on your team? Or can you develop it yourself? Those are all questions that you need to ask yourself. Well, I hope you learned something about habits and traits and how they can help your success. This isn't easy. It really requires a lot of self awareness and being able to look in the mirror and factually account for all the things you do, tracking your time and really looking at it in depth. And I would encourage you to have a really good plan in place for your next 365 days. I've got other information. Check out the channel. You'll find more information about strategic planning and other aspects of the strategic planning process. And again, if you need help, if you want somebody to guide you through this and facilitate the process, the level that I go through in extracting this is far more in depth than I can do in a 30-minute, 40-minute YouTube video. So yeah, check out tinymessengermedia.com if you're interested. Well, good luck and build those good habits and traits. See you around.